Hey folks, this is Kalani. This week is a little special when it comes to gearing up because it's the first time walking week we've seen in Season 2 proper, and the time walking event is interacting with the new upgrade system in a way that might end up being a bit too powerful, but it gives you some great chances for some nice gear upgrades. We're talking up to item level 437 gear, which is kinda crazy for how little effort you need to put in to get some of this stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about. How you can get some pretty powerful gear upgrades for doing some relatively quick and easy content. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Alright, so what are these super easy ways to gear up that we're talking about? Well, most of it revolves around the current time walking event. It's the first time walking event since the season started for real, so there are some pretty big changes to how the various rewards and items work that make them significantly better than they have been in the past. To start with, the weekly event to run 5 time walking dungeons can give you a piece of normal raid loot. Now that's not different at all, but the overall impact of that reward is different. A normal piece of raid gear starts at item level 415, that's why you see item level 415 on the box, but that's not how raid gear works in the current season, and that's not really how gear works in general right now thanks to the upgrade system. So the box can actually contain an item between item level 415 and 424, that's the range of normal loot in the raid, and whatever you get from that box can then also be upgraded up to item level 437 almost no matter what. So this box doesn't just contain an item level 415 piece of gear, it contains up to an item level 437 piece of gear. That's absolutely huge for just running 5 time walking dungeons. With the item level scaling in place, these dungeons are also super quick and easy to complete. I think we averaged about 7 to 8 minutes per dungeon, and that's with pugs who were just taking it easy. If you really wanted to rush these dungeons, you could probably get them done in 5 minutes. I know we have one guildie who basically tries to do them as quickly as possible. That's whatever he does whenever time walking comes around, and let me tell you, it is a very different game whenever we group with him. You also don't have to worry about setting up or joining any groups because it's all queued content. Just sign up and don't be AFK when your queue pops. Do that 5 times over and you'll get a free piece of gear. The gear should also be able to be pretty much anything from the raid, which makes it even more valuable. There are some pretty insane items in the raid this time. There are several amazing healing trinkets, there's another group related trinket that is very good across the board, there are even class trinkets that are mostly considered amazing, special weapons that can drop, there's even a special cloak from the last boss that can give you even more secondary stats, and maybe even tier gear. So with raid gear just being very powerful to begin with and having the potential to be upgraded way past its initial item level, that makes this box have amazing potential, especially for players or characters who don't raid or have access to this gear already. It's also still great for players who do raid too. You only have 1 chance per week, per boss, per difficulty to get the items you want, so if you're only doing the raid on normal, you only have 1 chance to get most of that loot per week. So this box gives you 1 more chance to get those special shiny items. I also want to point out that even though this is normal raid gear from this reward, heroic raid gear can only be upgraded to 441, just 4 item levels higher than normal raid gear, so with there being so much overlap in this system, it's basically heroic raid loot for free. So get your time walking dungeons done and keep your fingers crossed you get one of the good items, but even if you get a simple armor piece, that's another 437 item in your pocket. Now the gear inside of time walking dungeons isn't quite worth as much, it's item level 385 at max level and can't be upgraded at all for some reason, so really the only reason to run the time walking dungeons is to fulfill that 5 dungeon weekly quest requirement. Now sadly, the vendor gear for the time walking event still looks to be mostly useless as well. It's a low item level, doesn't work with the upgrade system at all, and doesn't really cover that many slots when all is said and done, so your badges are also better used elsewhere. But the real big change for time walking going forward can be found in the raids. During this week's Cataclysm time walking, the Firelands raid is also scaled for more time walking adventures, and all of the loot is also scaled up to actually be worth going after. With this being the first time walking event and the time walking raid during Season 2, we weren't too sure how this would all interact with the upgrade system, but it seems like it's going to be quite lucrative. The Firelands raid will drop item level 415 gear, which is on par with normal raid loot. That's already pretty good when you consider that time walking raids are typically easier than normal raids simply because everything is scaled. Item level doesn't mean anything in the time walking raid, so as long as you don't mess up the one-shot mechanics, the raid itself isn't too difficult to progress through. We joined a random pug in the group finder that filled up within 5 minutes. It was a full raid of 30, and we full cleared the raid in about 50 minutes total. We only wiped on Ragnaros once, and let me tell you, we were not doing these fights properly. We pretty much ignored most of the mechanics unless they were insta-wipe one-shots, and I feel like the raid was way easier than it was in past expansions with the time walking raids. So you should be able to kill most of the bosses in most pugs, and with no item level restriction, you can also join a group on any of your max level characters. That means that the time walking raid is probably easier than it's ever been, and it's also more rewarding at the same time. Because all of this gear still qualifies as Season 2 gear, it can all be upgraded. So those 415 pieces start on the champion track, which means they can be upgraded all the way to item level 437. So the time walking raid gives almost anyone another avenue to obtain item level 437 gear, which would usually require much more difficult content. Some of the items from the Firelands are also actually very good, especially the trinkets. I remember back in the day some of these trinkets were highly sought after, but now that they're available at item level 437, some of them are actually competing with heroic or mythic raid trinkets. They're actually simming that well right now. I know one in particular that has caught some high-end players' eyes is the Necromantic Focus. It's an intellect trinket that gives you mastery when you deal damage over time. So for any class or spec that can deal reliable damage over time, it's basically a big intellect and mastery trinket with 100% uptime, which is kinda crazy on some classes. I know the Shadow Priests are loving it and also hating it because they then have to run Firelands and get lucky. So not only do you have a chance to get some easy item level 415 upgradable gear, but you have a chance to get some very powerful items as well. Honestly, the only thing missing from the Firelands raid right now that would make it more lucrative to run would be Shadowflame crests and Flight Stones, but sadly they don't seem to be in here. So with the weekly time walking quest, the time walking raid, and the other weekly sources of gear like the Farak Assaults and the Heroic Dungeon weekly quest, we have so many different sources of item level 415 gear this week, so it's probably one of the best weeks to get some easy gear upgrades on any of your lower gear characters, or on your main if you're a solo only kind of player. Pretty much any gear that drops at the item level 415 mark can be upgraded all the way to 437 as well, so there's a lot of growth potential with this kind of loot. But that's all I wanted to cover in this quick video because it is a little time sensitive. Most of this is only good for this week. So good luck with your weekly time walking quest box. I hope you get something really shiny, and I hope you're also able to snag some loot from the raid. How do you feel about time walking being so potentially lucrative? Do you think the Firelands raid drops should be upgradable in the same system, or does that make this gear too powerful? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon or click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.